Nithar Ramachandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 787, joined by a really special guest. He's a Canadian broadcaster, play-by-play announcer. He's done a lot of stuff with college basketball, baseball, and called a lot of games throughout his career. His name is Shulman. It's truly an honor for you to be joining the show. One of the best out there in the broadcasting game. And first of all, how are you and your family doing so far during the summer?
I'm doing fine. 787 episodes. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started the show last year, and it's growing ever since. So.
Well, you must do one every day or two a day. It feels like then.
Yeah, I've done
wow. Good for
you. I've done 6 in one day before.
Wow, you're busy.
Yeah.
It's good to be young. Yeah.
So I want to start off with your childhood and growing up for you. And when did you start realizing that you wanted to be in the sports industry and being a broadcaster? And obviously, did you play any sports growing up before going into broadcasting?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I played a bunch of sports. I wasn't particularly good at any of them. I played 2 sports in high school: basketball and water polo. Actually, not a lot of professional water polo announcers around out there these days. But you know, I played. Played some baseball, played some ball hockey, played some tennis, but I wasn't great at anything. I didn't decide I wanted to be a broadcaster really till I was in college, and actually beyond that. I mean, I volunteered at the radio station at the university that I went to up here in Canada, but it wasn't until after I graduated when I said, you know what, I'm going to take a shot at this. I graduated in something else, started another career, but about 6 months in, I realized, you know what, I think I want to give this broadcasting thing a try. So I kind of fell into it by accident.
Yeah. So speaking of being from Canada, what's it like seeing your country and evolve? And obviously the sports there is growing with the Blue Jays starting to play better and the Raptors winning the championship. And what's it like being from there and seeing each sport growing?
So, you know, hockey's obviously been the biggest sport in Canada forever and ever. That hasn't changed. You know, baseball has been in Canada since 1969. That's when the Expos started. The Expos are gone now, but the Blue Jays came in 77. So it's been huge forever. They won the World Series in 1992, 1993, and baseball is extremely popular. The one that's jumped up the most is basketball in the last 20 years or so. The Raptors actually came in 1995. And as the Raptors got better and better and better, the last 5, 6, 7 years, the popularity exploded. We see more Canadians in the NBA now than we ever have. I see more Canadians in college basketball than we ever have. And the Raptors winning the championship a couple of years ago was an amazing thing. You know, when I was younger, I never thought we'd have the NBA in Toronto. And if I did, I never thought it would be that popular. But it's incredible how much it's grown, and it's especially, I think, with younger fans here. For some people, it's the most popular sport that there is in Toronto.
So this is a 2-part question here, and for you, what did you have any like role models growing up in the sports industry that you looked up to in the broadcasting world, and what have you learned as a broadcaster in high school and college that got you to this point right now?
So I wouldn't say I had role models. I had certain announcers that I really admired. My favorite was one well-known in Canada, but probably not as well-known in the United States. His name was Tom Cheek, and he was the original Blue Jay radio announcer. And eventually, when I started my career, many, many years later, I got a chance to get to know him and work with him. And, you know, he was the guy I listened to as a kid on the radio, and then to meet him and spend time with him was great. And he's in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame baseball announcer. And then some of the other guys I liked were, you know, kind of some of the classic play-by-play guys who did multiple sports in the United States. Al Michaels, obviously, maybe the best ever. Dick Enberg. I was a huge fan of Dick Enberg. And then some longtime radio baseball announcers who have all passed on, like Jack Buck and Harry Callis and Ernie Harwell. People like that. In terms of, what was the second question? The advice I got that helped
me? Yeah. So what were the main things that you learned in high school and college as a broadcaster, and when you were calling games, that got you to this point right now?
Well, high school, I wasn't doing this at all. It was just in university that I started doing it. And again, when I was doing it then, I wasn't thinking about it as a career. So I think a lot of it I was just doing for fun. Mm-hmm. But then when I decided to get into it after I'd graduated, when I was 22, 23 years old, the things I learned were, It's hard and it's very competitive, and you've really got to put work in it. I think a lot of young people say, hey, that looks glamorous, I want to get into that, but it takes a lot of work behind the scenes, and there are so many people who want to get into it. You've got to find a way to separate yourself from the crowd. So to me, it's more about work ethic and sacrifice. And what I mean by sacrifice is you might not, you probably won't work 9 to 5. So maybe you've got to work nights and weekends when your friends are out having a good time. Maybe you've got to move to a different city to start your career when all of your other friends are staying in town and starting their careers in whatever field they're in. So I think what I learned is there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes. People see the finished product, but I always make the analogy, like if you go to Broadway and see a play, or you go to a concert or something like that, you're seeing the finished product, but there was a ton of work that went into it behind the scenes to get it to that point.
Yeah, so for you, obviously you've been calling a lot of games throughout your career, and with baseball, basketball. So for you, what's it like just to calling games in multiple sports, and having those connections the people that you work with right now?
Yeah, I love it. I've done a little bit of some other stuff, but mainly, as you say, on baseball and college basketball. And it almost feels like I've got two separate jobs, which I guess I do. But, one season ends and then the other begins, and the other one ends and the first one starts again. And so it's always fresh for me. It's not a year-round thing. It's kind of 7 months of baseball and 5 months of college basketball every year. So I love it. I mean, I love hockey. I love football too, but baseball and basketball is where the opportunities presented themselves for me. And I feel very blessed that I've been able to do what I love doing in these two sports for as many years as I have. This is, I guess, 26 years for me calling baseball games, my 27th season calling baseball games and college basketball games. And they're very different. I work with different people sometimes. They have a very different pace and rhythm to it, but I've been beyond lucky that I've been able to do it for as long as I have.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, how do you balance both of them out with Sunday night baseball sometimes and college basketball? Obviously, college basketball is not here right now, but how do you balance it out, and how do you keep track of these players that you guys write down on a list? Or obviously you guys have papers there, but how do you balance it out though throughout the daily basis?
So, like I said, the two sports don't really overlap. Yeah. So my baseball ends at the end of the World Series, and my college basketball starts usually about 10 days later. And then my college basketball ends the middle of March, and my baseball usually starts about 10 days later. So, but I do some baseball work during the basketball season, some basketball work during the baseball season. You're always online, and if you see an article or a story that, you think might help you in the next season, I just stick it in my downloads folder, save it, archive it, read it later. So you're always kind of prepping a little bit, even for things beyond what you're doing right then. But in terms of how do you remember, it's just like studying for an exam.
Yeah.
Just have to continually upgrade their knowledge to stay, to research their craft. And it's the same thing for me. If I have, Kentucky, Florida on a Tuesday, and then I have North Carolina on a Saturday. So, leading up to the Kentucky, Florida game, I'm doing that prep. And as soon as that game's over, it's on to the next one. And I do think of it like being in exams, being in finals, where you're constantly cramming. And as soon as one's done, it's time to get ready for the next one.
Yeah, so speaking of connections, it's always important in the sports industry to build those connections. And you got to work with legends, with Dick Vitale, Jay Billis, Eduardo Perez, John Shambi, Aaron Boone, who's a manager now for the Yankees, Jessica Mendoza. So what's it like working with with those people, talented people?
It's great. When I was young and just getting into it, and I started working with people that, may have been athletes when I was a kid, it took a little bit of getting used to. So, I mean, I'm older than you, so I'm going to go back a ways here, and I don't know how much you'll know about some of these people, but, I worked with Joe Morgan, who's in the Hall of Fame, the late Joe Morgan who's in the Hall of Fame, the late Tony Gwynn, who's in the Hall of Fame. And, so at the beginning, it was a little bit intimidating. You get through that eventually, but you become coworkers. And so when I worked with Aaron or Jess or Oral Hershiser, John Kruk, Terry Francona, Jay Billis, Dick Vitale, you become friends with them too. So I trust them, they trust me. I depend on them, they depend on me. And it's both a professional relationship and a personal relationship. But it's at the end of the day, everybody's got the same goal. You want to do the best job you can on air as a team, and put the best telecast on air of whatever game it is that you're doing. So when I was younger, there was a little bit of an intimidation factor, but as I've gotten older, especially some of them who are former athletes, they might just be getting into broadcasting, and I've been in it a long time. So it's funny, in some ways they're leaning on me more than I'm nervous to be working with them, but it comes quickly, and I've always tried to make whoever I work with as comfortable as I can make them.
I also forgot Carl Ravage and Tim Kirchin too. I can't forget.
Yeah, well, I don't work well. I don't work with Carl. So Carl does. I'm a play-by-play announcer. Carl's a play-by-play announcer. So we do different things. And I don't know that I've ever worked with Tim. But so Tim does the Monday night game and some studio stuff. Tim and I are good friends, though. So, but yeah, there are a lot of very, very talented people, whether it's at ESPN or the people I work with in Canada. On the Blue Jay telecast. But at the end of the day, like I said, you become teammates, just like athletes are teammates on their teams. We're teammates on our telecasts, and everybody's trying to make the show the best it can be.
Yeah. So for you, how hard is it not being in the studio sometimes and working from home and utilizing different platforms and when you work and all, what have you learned as a broadcaster from this past year with the pandemic? And we're still going through it too, but what have you learned adjusting to a new environment?
Yeah, it's challenging. I would much rather be at the arena or much rather be at the baseball stadium, at the ballpark, than doing it from a studio or at home. But this is the only way it can be done right now. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done games. I've done a few basketball games on site this past year. I've done baseball games from a studio with my broadcast partner with me. I've done baseball games from a studio with my broadcast partner in a different location. And I've done games from home. I did one last night for ESPN with my broadcast partner, Jess Mendoza, in a different location. So it is challenging. Technologically, a lot can go wrong. Hopefully it doesn't. But, when you just don't see things as well, especially for baseball, you just don't see things as well when you're sitting at home watching it off a TV monitor or a laptop as you do when you're at the ballpark. So you really have to lock in and focus and do the best you can. There are some things that are quite, you can do fairly easily. There are some things that are not as easy to do, and it's not the same as being at a ballpark. But again, I'm happy to be working and very grateful that I'm working, and we're all just trying to do the best job we can.
You guys called that Yankees-Rangers game yesterday, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so for you, what would you say your most memorable game that you called throughout your career in baseball and basketball?
In baseball, most of them would be for ESPN radio, because that's when I did the playoffs. ESPN TV was a regular season job. They haven't had the playoffs other than one wild card game when I was doing that for them. So most of it would be ESPN radio, whether it was the Cubs winning the World Series, whether it was David Freese in Game 6 of the 2011 World Series for St. Louis when he tripled to tie and homered to win it. Jose Bautista's bat flip game, the 2015 division series when the Blue Jays beat Texas. A lot of it would be baseball playoffs, a lot of different baseball playoffs. For basketball, again, ESPN has the regular season, so I don't do the NCAA tournament. But I've been so lucky to do the Duke Carolina games for the last 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. So I've done maybe around 25 of those, all of which are special. And then one other game that stands out to me that I always talk to people about was an unranked Indiana team beating number 1 Kentucky back in 2011 when Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist were on Kentucky, and Indiana beat them on a 3-pointer at the buzzer. And it's the loudest, probably the loudest place I've ever been in. So those are some of them. Again, almost everything I've done has been regular season, just because the sports I worked in at ESPN, they have the regular season rights, but they don't have the playoff rights. So, but doing ESPN radio and getting a chance to call the last 10 World Series has been really great.
So for you, obviously the baseball season's already mid through. So what are your thoughts so far in the season, and especially the Blue Jays? They're playing on a high level right now.
Yeah, so I do a lot more Blue Jays now than ESPN baseball. I switched a few years ago, and the Blue Jays are a lot of fun. They're doing well in spite of a lot of injuries. And, with young players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette, they've got a really exciting young group. And I think it's got a chance to be a great race in the American League East between the Red Sox, the Rays, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees. All of them are good, and I think all of them will be there. But I'm just glad we're back to 162 games. You know, it feels like a relatively normal baseball season, you know, especially compared to last year. If this were last year, we'd be 2/3 of the way through already. So I'm glad that it's 162. The pace and the rhythm of the season feel like it's always felt. And there are a lot of great storylines. You know, the White Sox are an interesting, talented team. The Giants doing what they're doing in the National League West, and the Dodgers having their injuries and struggling the way that they have. There are a lot of good storylines and a lot of great young players. You know, you watch a Guerrero or an Acuna or a Soto or players like that, and we're seeing some of the most talented baseball players I've ever seen.
What are your thoughts on the new the extra innings rule? Do you like that rule at all?
The runner on second base?
Yeah.
I don't, to be honest with you, I don't get too, caught up or angry one way or another about things. I understand why they're doing it, and it made sense. And I think the reaction to it has been more positive than maybe was expected. If I were in charge, I would ask them to play the regular rules for the 10th and 11th inning.
Okay.
And then if it's not done by 11, in the 12th inning, go to the runner at second. So I think I would have some kind of a compromise. It's a little bit gimmicky. It's not traditional, but there's so much that's changed in baseball over the years already, even though it's still considered to be, a very traditional laden sport. And I don't know how many people stay up and watch games that are 13, 14, 15, 16 innings long, and you run out of pitching and guys get hurt. And so I'm okay with it. But if I had a choice, I would have them start that in the 12th inning.
So I'm a big Yankee fan here, and obviously Aaron Boone, the manager, and you worked with him. So what's it like seeing him develop as a broadcaster and now a manager? And what do you think of him as a manager so far in his third year?
Fourth year. I think he's doing great. Yeah, I think he's doing very well. Aaron and I are still very good friends, and we were working together on the playoffs in 2017 when all this kind of stuff started happening, where a couple of teams were reaching out to him about, hey, do you have an interest about getting back into the game? The Yankee thing didn't start until the very end, but I'm really happy for him. I know he's happy. I know he wanted to get back into the game. He was great at TV. We had an awesome time together. We worked together for many years. And he was terrific at that. And he could always come back and do that if he wanted to, but I'm happy to see him getting a job of this magnitude. I mean, to go from never having coached or managed at all to being the manager of the New York Yankees is pretty wild. So I know some fans have gotten on his case a little bit, leaving a pitcher in too long or whatever it is. And that's the nature of the beast. That's managing in baseball. And I think he's learned from some things, but I think he's got a lot of great qualities, and I think he's doing a great job.
So a couple more things before I let you go. And obviously you covered the college basketball season. And what are some of the prospects that you like in this year's draft and coming up for the NBA, like Jalen Suggs or Cade Cunningham? Which prospects do you like in this season so far?
I love Jalen Suggs. I think he's great. I think he was a football player in high school too, and he plays basketball with a football player's mentality. He plays hard. And I think wherever he goes, he's going to be great. I think Cade Cunningham is going to be a special player in the NBA. In college, he was a special player too. He makes other people better. He can blend in sometimes, and sometimes you want to say, hey, just take over the game. But I think in the NBA, where everybody is talented, he's really going to be a super player. He'll score, he'll pile up assists, he'll rebound, he can play different positions. And Evan Mobley out of USC is a great player as well, 6'10", 6'11", and some perimeter skills. I think he's got to get a little more aggressive, maybe put on a little weight, but I think, he might be a guy who takes 2-3 years before you really see his ceiling, but I think his ceiling is really high. They're always great players coming out of college basketball. Sometimes I wish they would stay a little bit longer because I do college basketball. I don't do the NBA, and I'd like to see these great guys for more than a year, but I can't blame them for going.
I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Who's the funniest person that you work with right now?
The funniest person?
Yeah.
Well, Vital's pretty damn funny. So it's hard not to pick. Dick Vitale. He and I, we don't work together as much as we used to. We just do a few games a year together now. I'm more with Jay. But for many, many years, Dick and I worked together 30, 35 times a winter. And Dick is exactly what you would think that he is like. He's great. He's hilarious. He's been wonderful to me and my family. We have a terrific relationship. And, sometimes it's funny, haha. Sometimes it's funny, peculiar. But I would say Dick Vitale is one of the most interesting and the funniest people I know.
Yeah. So before we get to the last two things, I want to ask you about Mike Breen. Obviously, he's now getting elected for the Hall of Fame. And what are your thoughts on him? A legendary play-by-play announcer. What are your thoughts on Mike Breen?
I love Mike Breen. I think Mike Breen is one of the best play-by-play people I've ever heard. We're good friends. We don't get a chance to see each other very often, but we do keep in touch. We've gone out for dinner here and there when I've been in his town or he's been in my town. I think Mike is fantastic. Mike and I look at the broadcast at play-by-play in a very similar way. We want to make the show good. We want to make our analysts comfortable. It's not about us. It's not about ego. It's about everybody getting a chance to chip in and make it the best possible telecast. And I'm thrilled for Mike that he went into the Hall of Fame. I think he's one of the best I've ever heard.
And the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach, and now he's the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. So I'm going to send you that page. We're trying to help him prevent human trafficking and making sure that the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. And we're really grateful to be part of the foundation. So I'll send you that page so you can check it out. And
okay, sounds good.
And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
I would just like to say that they're the heroes of all this over the last year and a half. And we can't thank frontline workers enough for keeping everybody else safe. And I hope they're able to stay safe, and that I hope we're closer to the finish line than the start of all this. But we can't thank them enough for their bravery and the work they've put in, because we'd all be in big trouble without them.
Yeah, well said. And also, would you like to let people know what you guys have coming up next for the game wise? And would you like to let people know?
Well, I don't have any ESPN stuff for a couple of weeks. So again, I know you're in the US, but I'm doing a lot of Blue Jay games now. So I'm off for a few days. I've got the Blue Jays coming up next week. I think I've got an ESPN game, the Pirates and the Royals, I believe, on the 31st. And assuming there's an Olympics, I'm calling Olympic basketball up here on Canadian TV, which I'm very excited about. So I'm getting a chance to do a bunch of different things, and that works for me. I like that a lot.
Wow, that's awesome. And there it is. That wraps up episode 787 with the great play-by-play announcer, Dan Shulman. Go follow him on all social media formats. Like I said, he's one of the best out there. Thank you again for coming on the show. And we would like to have you back as a returning guest one of these days so you can meet the full team. But thank you again. Keep up the great work, and you and your family stay safe.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.